Hello, my name's Tom and this is Proper Honest Tech. On the 25th of March 2020, Apple released their latest iPad Pro models, the 4th gen of their 12.9-inch model and the 2nd gen of their 11-inch. I picked up an 11-inch model pretty soon after and have used it on a regular basis ever since. With that in mind, here's my thoughts on the 2020 iPad Pro, what I like, what I'm not so keen on, and whether or not I think it's a smart purchase now in January of 2021. I absolutely loved the design of the iPad Pro. I think this is the vision that Steve Jobs and his team must have had in mind when they were originally building the iPad, a sheet of glass that has nothing to distract you on the front. It's incredibly thin and light. There's no notch here on the front. The Face ID tech is all built into the bezel at the top of the display. On the back of the device, you have the camera notch, which pokes out like all Apple notches and houses 2 cameras as well as the LiDAR scanner and flash. At the bottom of the screen, you've got these 3 little metal dots, which allow the device to attach to various cases and keyboards, and on the side of the device, you have the usual speakers, volume, and power buttons. The first thing that strikes you when you power up your iPad Pro for the first time is the screen. It's bold and bright, with stunning colors that really pop. Your photos will never have looked better than they do here. But what's really impressive is the refresh rate, a 120Hz display that Apple are calling ProMotion. Basic things like flicking from one page of apps to the next feels smoother than it has on any other Apple device, and once you've spent a bit of time with an iPad Pro, you'll begin to understand why people are so excited for this feature to come to the iPhone. As for brightness, I've been able to use this in low-lit rooms in my flat, as well as bright coffee shops in the middle of summer, and never had any issues. Apple claim that the device can handle both HDR content and Dolby Vision. I've loaded up and watched content from Apple TV, Netflix, Disney+, YouTube, and whilst I can't say with certainty that I'm viewing true Dolby Vision, it definitely looks mighty impressive. The touch element of the display is everything you would expect it to be. The screen is responsive to touch and pretty seamless when you decide to stop using your fingers and switch to the Apple Pencil. It is, however, despite what Apple claim, as much of a fingerprint magnet as ever, so make sure you keep some screen wipes close at hand. The sound that comes out of this iPad is significantly larger than it has any right to be. There are 4 speakers in the device, a left and right at both the top and the bottom when holding the device in portrait mode. This means that even if you flip to landscape, you're still getting a really wide, convincing stereo image. It can also get loud if you want it to, whilst a multitude of microphones mean that the device is more than capable to be used to have out loud Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime sessions. For the vast majority of tasks, the sound that this thing kicks out is going to be beyond sufficient and bordering on overkill. It's big, bold, and bassy. I don't do benchmarks on this channel. Most of us, even the benchmark geeks, don't get bogged down in those things on a day-to-day basis when we're actually using the device. All I know is that when it comes to completing tasks, this thing is blazing fast. I've never had it crash or even slow down on me once in nearly 9 months of using it. The iPad Pro uses the A12Z Bionic chip, and as we've seen recently thanks to the Apple Silicon Macs, you're essentially getting laptop or even desktop computing power in a tablet, and it is of course for this reason why the iPad Pro zips along so well. The battery life is really good. Apple claims that you can manage 10 hours of web surfing or watching video. I use my iPad Pro in various different facets of my business and have it as a companion device most of the time, always on, always doing something, and I can vouch for those kind of battery claims. I typically charge it overnight via the included USB-C cable, and it definitely lasts me a full day or 2 of use from that point on. Okay, Face ID, and there isn't much to say other than if you've used it on an iPhone, you're going to be getting the same experience here. What I find really impressive though is both the range and the angle at which Face ID can work. It even does this cool little animation if the camera is ever covered. As for the cameras, they're all very good. The front-facing camera is more than suitable for FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, etc. On the rear, you've got a 12-megapixel wide camera with a 1.8 aperture and a 10-megapixel ultra-wide with a 2.4 aperture, putting the cameras here easily on par with the likes of the iPhone 10 or 11. Now, I stand by my belief that it's only mums at weddings who use their iPads for taking pictures, but what I do use my iPad Pro for is shooting product video, and it's actually really good for this purpose, certainly every bit as good as a recent iPhone. Or maybe I'm wrong. Do you use your iPad for shooting photos? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so who is this for and would I recommend it? This is where what would otherwise be an overwhelmingly glowing review begins to take on more of a negative turn. At a starting price of £769 for the 128GB Wi-Fi only 11-inch model, the iPad Pro is pricey. This is actually the configuration that I went for, essentially the lowest end of all the available iPad Pros. And even then, the only reason I went for this was because at the time it was the only iPad which didn't have a Touch ID home button and the awful chin bezel at the bottom. If you spec the device up, a 1TB Wi-Fi cellular 12.9-inch device will cost you £1,619, which in my opinion is bonkers for a tablet. Right now, you can get an iPad Air for £579 and a newly improved iPad for just over £300. The original iPad doesn't look anywhere near as good as the Pro or the Air, but it's about half the price of the Air and does pretty much everything that the average consumer needs. So, the question is, what's most important to you? Do you care enough about how the device looks and performs to warrant the extra money? Do you need so-called pro features like the LiDAR scanner and multiple cameras? The answers to these questions are ultimately going to drive you to whichever decision you come to make. But rest assured, if you can afford it and you're okay with the price, the iPad Pro is a phenomenal piece of kit. How Apple continue to differentiate the Pro line from the Air moving forward is going to be really interesting, and with it being almost a full calendar year since the last Pro update, unless you can pick one of these up on a deal, it could be worth waiting just a little bit longer before you commit to a purchase. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video today. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please do leave me a like and consider subscribing to my channel for more content. It really does help. See you on the next video.